plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or computer failure took out your bank, or all the banks for that matter. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it, I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? Well, squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drives to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Thousands of years ago, the Earth was a different place. A race existed like no other. Theirs was a technology far ahead of the levels that we know of today. They faced a disaster similar to that which killed the dinosaurs. They sent their people out into space. Only a few brave souls stayed to help the less advanced inhabitants of the planet rebuild. They were genetically advanced men, almost immortal, incredibly powerful, telepathic, and able to manipulate matter with their minds. They were known as gods, angels, warriors, and demons among the survivor of our planet's close encounter with a galactic intruder. The legends and names of these beings are scattered throughout our history. Their power grew all-pervasive and hidden throughout modern times. Humanity was divided, conquered, and controlled by unseen hands. Today, the balance of power shifted into the hands of the most feared being in history. In Morals and Dogma, Albert Pike writes, Lucifer, the light bearer, strange and mysterious name to give the spirit of darkness. Lucifer, the son of the morning. Is it he who bears the light as splendors, intolerable, blinds, feeble, sensual, or selfish souls? Doubt it not. He also says that truth is not for those who are unworthy or unable to receive it or would pervert it. The truth must be kept secret, and the masses need a teaching proportion to their imperfect reason, and every man's conception of God must be proportioned to his mental cultivation and intellectual powers and moral excellence. God is, as man conceives him, the reflected image of man himself. Now, if this was the movie, folks, you'd see a mountainous dirt road with a single chrome black Harley Davidson kicking up dust, riding towards a deserted lake. But I'm not going to go there right now. That, let's just say it, tell it from Lucifer's viewpoint. Dry desert wind whipped my oilskin. The damn helmet's chin strap was rubbing the raw spot on my neck, and my sunglasses did little to prevent the dirt from filling my eyes. The Harley was squarely on the loose, rut-filled dirt road. I was alone, as usual. This mountainous, deserted terrain is not the kind most riders or tourists would take for a Sunday ride, even fewer on a Wednesday, perhaps. Besides, how could I explain to other bikers what I was looking for? For the millionth time, I cursed God for putting me through all this. I wish I could just forget about my quest, lay back, enjoy the pleasures the world had to offer. I still have my health, but my youthful good looks, youthful devilish good look, were lost long ago. Gray now streaked my mustache and goatee. My hair, tied tight in a ponytail, contained more silver than black. Still, the search consumed me. I was following one more obscure lead, UFO reports in the early 60s, a demented old man in the mountain, Indian tales of spirits in these mountains, and the ancient white man who lived forever. I had followed rumor and legend through the rainforests of the Amazon, through the jungles surrounding Angkor Wat, into the mountains of the ancient Telemaco, an island on Lake Titicaca in Bolivia. Revisiting the ancient sites had been the hardest on me. In my mind's eye, I could still see the happy populace at play in what had once been a resort. I could still see the statues and arches and massive buildings as they had been. I could see the old civilization as no one else on earth could see it. Reality came rushing back as the front wheel of my Harley hit a loose rock. I fought the handlebars to gain control, felt a small surge of pride at my mastery of the simple machine. I should have brought a Jeep, but I'd grown very fond of this machine and the society within a society it represented. I was at ease with the coarse, rough, good-hearted men who lived the last free lifestyle in the increasingly oppressive world. I've always gravitated to these kinds. Unconsciously, my fingers fondled my stash, the hollow keychain containing the tiny pills that kept me alive, and wondered how much longer I would continue to take them. Maybe my time had finally come. Maybe I did not like this new world order and the limitations it placed upon me. I sensed that the object of my obsession had already departed. Maybe the slogan in the 60s was based on fact. Maybe God really was dead. His presence was lacking in this era. The children no longer feared him, respected their elders, or life itself. There was no honor, no responsibility, no fear of retribution. Religion was reduced to feeding the poor, and there was no more fear of God or devil in man anymore. Just as well, I thought. I'm tired of this whole thing. Lucky was my nickname, but luck had not been with me in my quest. There were still a few miles to go before the road ran out. I thought of the rash of UFO sightings. I knew that the government had stumbled onto the secret of their magnetic drive in its research, or found an alien craft, or one of the ancient ships that plied the skies of this planet. The number of sightings have made my sight much more difficult until now. Around the turn, high up in the mountains, there was the lake I knew would have to be there. I felt a chill run up my back. Could this be the home of God? I felt like Indiana Jones seeing the Holy Grail for the first time. Deep in the deserts of Nevada, there is a secret base which is said to house the U.S. version of the UFOs. It's a massive structure built 16 stories underground. Giant doors are open to allow helicopters and saucers access. The place I was looking for would not be that elaborate. It would be far off the beaten track, or the track beaten by civilization. It would have to have a large body of water. It'd have to be high in the mountains. It'd have to be deep enough to hold a mystery that had held mankind in its grasp for the last 10,000 years. I parked the bike at the water's edge. No one but a few disappointed fishermen and some four-wheelers had ever come this way. Lack of fish in this lake was one of the reasons I was here. The lake with no name and no fish was about a half a mile across. I slowly walked the shoreline, watching for something only I would see. My eye was drawn to a large rock formation that rose from the depths of the lake. The massive rocks reminded me of those scattered about the shores of Lake Titicaca, but these were rough and uncarved. The smallest of these boulders would have weighed more than 2 tons. No one would have thought of them being moved by anything short of a volcanic eruption, but to me, they appeared to be carefully placed and stacked. There were no natural outcroppings in this type of rock for miles. My lifelong search was over. Here on the banks of a lake in a tiny mountain range in the middle of the Mojave Desert lay the answer to mankind's greatest mystery. I ran shaking fingers over the hairline seams in the rock until I found the hidden latch. The 1-ton solid granite door swung open to reveal a staircase leading down under the lake itself, as I knew it would. The air felt good against my windburned face, and I unsheathed the small mag light from my belt. There were no cobwebs, rats, few insects. So tight was the seal. The tunnel had been burned through solid rock and ran 50 feet under the lake bed. It ended abruptly. I directed the flashlight's beam upward, and it reflected off a mirrored, seamless metal surface with 5 indentations in the center. I reached up hesitantly. All of the things that could go wrong running through my mind. The best scenario being that my touch would not do anything. The worst, that there was nothing above my head but tons of mud and water, both of which would come crashing down on my head before I could escape down the tunnel and find the inside trigger to the stone door. This was no time to turn back. I had invested much more than a lifetime searching for this. I reached up and placed my fingers in the depressions. Like magic, a tiny circular crack appeared in the metal skin. The circle slid inward and over. A metallic letter slid out quietly. I'd been aware that I'd been holding my breath and inhaled deeply. I climbed the ladder and knew instantly that I was the only living being aboard the ship. Life support was still functioning and would continue to do so into infinity. It had been built by a society that was not based on planned obsolescence. I followed spotless corridors unerringly through the control room. The dust from my windbreaker was swiftly sucked up by automatic vacuums before it could hit the non-skid, soft metallic floor. The door slid open to reveal the control room. Here were the only signs of clutter I'd seen since on board. A cup here, a plate there, a robe cast over a control panel that would guide the great ship at one time. The room was dimly lit by instruments. As I entered, the movement triggered a bright set of lights, and I saw him in the corner, leaning over the charting table. His long white hair flowed over the edge of the table, and his head rested on the book he had been writing in. In the sterile atmosphere, there was no decomposition. He looked as though he was merely asleep. I half expected to see his eyes open and a smile to shine through the snow-white beard when he saw me. Before touching him, I removed my jacket. I didn't want to soil the spotless white robes. Even in death, he was massive. It took all of my strength to lift him from the chair and carry him to his cabin off the control room, laying him on his bed. I stared at him for fully 5 minutes as silent tears ran down to my cheeks. This was not the ending I had envisioned. I felt none of the hatred that had welled up in my soul in the past. The quest that had driven me was over. I had found my grail, but no joy and satisfaction. I had found the foundation of every legend, of every religion. I now possessed the greatest secret in the universe. I now held the key to power beyond mortal man's comprehension. I had access to knowledge forbidden man for centuries. I had won the greatest game ever played, yet I felt nothing but emptiness and loneliness. Returning to the control room, like misty ghosts, the almost ancestral memories flooded my consciousness. Sit down on the throne-like captain's chair, touch this, and the craft would rise silently, responsively, immediately to an altitude above the highest satellite. Touch there, and the laser beam would carve the greatest stone into an engraved portal. Another touch, and it would be lifted, transported, and transplanted with micromillimeter accuracy. The same button would part seas, smash walls, and destroy cities. I touched nothing. Instead, I walked over and sat down in the seat he had died in. I opened the book he had been writing in. The entries were combinations of pictographs and ruins no modern man had ever seen. There were no more than 2 or 3 archaeologists could have translated. Opening the book, I began reading. I was mad once. Only now, after so many years, can I see clearly. I'm afraid it's too late to undo all I have done. I hope someday someone will be able to read this chronicle without their being blinded and prejudiced by the chain of events I, in my madness, started. Under the circumstances, I suppose any man might have made the same errors, followed the same path. Still, I do not record this in an effort to seek forgiveness or even pity. By the time anyone is capable of truly understanding the world I came from, I'll have been long dead. My bones dust, hidden from all eyes in a tomb that contains all of the knowledge of the most advanced civilization in the world. A civilization that died in spite of all our technical skills, all our mental achievements. I'm not a scientist. I'm an old man alone with my memories. My younger days were spent in the same pursuits as most men. Women, travel, excitement. I was one of the fortunate ones, born into a world rich in the material things so treasured by men. A world without war, secret of near immortality was ours. Yet from my birth I knew the shadow of fear. A fear I do not feel as strongly as my father and his generation because of its ever-present nearness. In fact, after adolescence, I spent my life preparing for impending doom. My scientific colleagues had other names for it, the celestial conjunction, the conjunction, but members of my crew simply called it the end of the world as we knew it. For over 250 years, everyone had known the exact day the end would occur. It really began for me a week before the day of conjunction. I had just left Isis, my wife, at her home to do some last-minute packing. I had one last minute to attend in the Temple of Higher Learning before we left. I was in no hurry. There was, quite possibly, the last time I would be able to walk the shaded paths of the most beautiful city on earth. Long ago, we learned to live in harmony with nature, and I breathed in the fragrance of 100 types of blooming flowers. I can still remember the chattering of the monkey and squirrels in the trees lining the way. Through the thick growths of shrubs and flowers, I could see the vacant, desolate-looking homes of my neighbors, most of whom had already left. There were not more than 30,000 of us left on earth. There were more unfortunate neighbors, of course. I'd spent over 50 years before the end trying to educate them and prepare them for the coming Holocaust, but I'd been able to convince myself we were all of the same origin, that we were all Homo sapiens. I imagine if their ancestors had been the ones to discover the longevity drug 5,000 years ago instead of us, they would be the ones leaving for the stars today, and we would be the poor, frightened savages left behind to take our chances. I strolled by the spaceport in time to see the last of the ferries taken off with its load of colonists, destined to spread the seed of mankind to the far reaches of the galaxy, a one-way trip. A last grasp at the survival of the race. Up above were the gigantic interstellar liners. At 2 o'clock today, they would activate the drives that would push them to the speeds of light, near that of light. If we'd only had a little more time, I feel sure we could have learned the secret of faster than light travel. Then it would have been possible for the colonists to turn around the event that after the conjunction they were still on Earth. But we hadn't. And we couldn't take the chance of letting the big ships stay in the neighborhood of the solar system. There was no way we could predict whether the sun would go nova in a chain reaction. Nobody has ever recorded the effects of worlds and collision. The silver ship floated gently out of sight in clouds. Not really sure of my feelings, I turned my eyes toward the 4 mighty ships left on the empty-looking fields. shining silver circular ships. Each of them measured several hundred feet across. They've been jokingly called the missionary missiles and my irritation, the chariot of the gods, referring to the way some of the natives deified us. For the last 50 years, we had been traveling all over the globe in an attempt to prepare the neighboring peoples for the coming cataclysm. We violated 5,000 years of oscillation from our fellow members of the human race. We had been forced to endure the ridicule of the people who felt nothing but contempt for the less advanced races on our globe. In the final analysis, we pointed out we could not be sure who would survive. Therefore, it was our duty to ensure that the knowledge we'd gained would not perish. We could not let the human race sink into savagery. We did quite well financially, trading our technical knowledge and assistance for a variety of agricultural products, and gold mined in other regions of the world. It was a noble cause, but I remember wondering at the time if I had sacrificed the lives of my wife and crew by choosing to remain on Earth. My crew, my angels, had volunteered to stay with me to the end. They were on the ship now. The balance of the population had decided to remain on their home planet and sat huddled in their homes, held by territorial imperative, hoping against reason that Earth would survive, and in doing so, spare them. I was counting on it also, but I had the advantage and safety of a craft that was impervious to gravity or the elements. I had every edge our technology could give us. Reluctantly, I tore my eyes from my ship and walked briskly across the broad plaza separating the spaceport and the temple. Normally, people were bustling to and fro, lovers sitting on the park benches. Today, only two figures were in the mile-square plaza. They were setting a course to intercept me. As they came closer, I recognized them as two natives that had come with us from our last trip to Egypt. The tall, broad-shouldered one we called Gil, who was somewhat of a celebrity among his people. Gabe had met him and been so impressed he requested permission to bring him back. It seemed that his people thought that Gil was one of the gods. As a matter of fact, he did bear a striking resemblance to Luce, but no one had the nerve to suggest a thing, and Luce wasn't about to admit to anything. Gil's mind was exceptionally quick to handle concepts, and he had all the qualities of a born leader. He and Gabe became fast friends. They appeared to be the same age, but Gabe was about 280, while Gil was only 20. I was a little concerned that Gabe had let him wander off this close to takeoff time. His companion was his friend and servant named Inky, a short, stocky youth, typical of his race. Inky followed Gil around like a little puppy, although he could be transformed into a raging bull if he thought Gilgamesh was in danger. Near me, he always seemed to be in a state of religious ecstasy. Although I was running late for the meeting, I stopped and accepted the proffered pipe that Gil always carried. He kept it filled with his personal stash, and when I inhaled, I wondered if perhaps his people weren't keeping the best for themselves and giving us the part they would normally throw away. Maybe they weren't as stupid as most people like to think. Gil faced me with respect, but none of the awe that was prevalent in Inky's attitude. "Captain Lord," he said, after I had passed the pipe back to him and completed the little ceremony, "I would like to request permission to join you in the last days, sirs. I promise not to be a hindrance, and I will do my best to be useful." He stood straight and tall, his eyes only an inch or two below my gaze directly, a thing that most of the members of the backward races are unable to do. I suppose I do present a rather unnerving sight. My hair and beard are long, bushy, and snow white, tops off at 6'4" makes me look old, wise, and terrible when I'm angry. I'm not. At least I wasn't back then. That was over 5,000 years ago. I was only 330. I was just prematurely gray, but I was still sane and not terrible at all then. I put my hand on Gil's shoulder. Not only did it seem like a good gesture to make, helped to steady me, I find it hard to believe he can smoke that stuff all day long and still be able to stand up, although he has not mastered mind-to-mind communication. I almost felt that he was one of us. I would be delighted to have you on board my ship, Gilgamesh, I told him. He beamed at me and stammered his thanks. I told him to rush back to the ship and aid Gabe and the other angels, as I call the ones that have earned their wings. In the last minute loading, I braced myself as he ran back to the ship and turned back to the meeting. I got more than a few dirty looks from the other captains and Archie, the resident scientist, when I entered the conference room. My best friend and co-captain, the only member of my crew who wasn't afraid to stand up to me, Lucifer Arch, eased the tension. Lord, the only man who would dare to be late for the end of the world, he said with a smile. Didn't get much of a laugh, and it did allow me to slide into a seat next to him quietly while everyone gave him the dirty look for his poor taste. Luce didn't care. He always had a smile on his face. He and I had grown up together. I was only a year older than him, but he's one of the lucky people that would never have a problem, not that I consider it a problem, with his hair turning white. He sported a mustache and goatee. He had never married, but he always seemed to have a flock of women around him whenever we were in port. How he's able to find such beautiful creatures among the plain dumping native women, I'll never know. That's why we nicknamed him Lucky. Old Archibald, the chief archivist, and the last real scientist left on Earth, resumed his speech, throwing me one last look. I tried not to look bored. I'd heard it all before. I was saying, Tet, that we are counting quite heavily on you four men. He nodded his head to include the other three captains and their mates to preserve the knowledge that we have accumulated over the years. We've known for 250 years that the planets Mars and Venus would approach our Earth's orbit when Nibiru came around. We know it will be close, but we do not know how to calculate exactly how close. The resulting contact may completely destroy our world. Escaping that, we can be sure that the ensuing upheavals may destroy most of the sentient life on this planet. We have provided for you and the men and women of your crew the optimum survival craft for a collision between planets. It is your task to survive and lead the surviving population of the world along the paths of civilization. His eyes scanned the table. If some of you should survive but your ship is lost, there have been 3 libraries established as structures calculated to survive the catastrophe. He pointed out the locations in Tia, Egypt, and one in Asia. It will then be up to you to make your way up there and establish yourself as the keepers of the keys to civilization. It is hoped, of course, that with a miracle we will survive here also. Even now, the destruction has begun. We have reports that the expected meteor shower has started. The spaceship and the space station has been destroyed. I can only urge you to get to your ships as soon as possible. We stood as one man. Old Arch looked at us, his face struggling to retain his stern countenance. Perhaps one day we will meet again, gentlemen. Goodbye and good luck. He turned and was out of the room quickly. We were out of our chairs and rushing to our respective ships. Luce fell in step with me and explained there had been a little more and waved an envelope containing more detailed instructions and suggestions. I think old Archie just wanted to say goodbye to us. The products of his brainchild, Luce said with a thought. Archie had been the man that started the program. It was late afternoon. Out of habit, Luce and I looked up. Even in the evening light, you could see him plainly. Mars to the primitive, the bloody god of war. Bloody god of war. Odd how well this name seemed to fit. The god of war bent on destroying the Earth in his battle with the planet Venus. Venus would make her grand entry into the ballroom of the skies, or battleground if you prefer, from the west a little later. Tonight they would both be there, 2 huge, unwinking, unrelenting norms in the midnight sky. Mars a glaring bloody red, a piercing, unwavering eye bent on destruction. Venus cloudy and mysterious, her gases trailing behind her like a silvery, shimmering gown, changing her appearance often like a woman. Sometimes she appeared in the night sky as a serpent breathing fire. The night skies were indeed a wonder. Even in the brightness of our Even the brightness of our own moon paled in the face of the unearthly beauty of the hurtling celestial spheres. A beauty that masked the death and destruction that the heavenly messengers brought. We were walking back towards my house to pick up Icy when a sharp thought from Luz turned my gaze upwards. Even in the light, I could see them plainly. Meteors, 8 of them in rows of 2, in perfect geometrical procession. They were close, probably just reaching the upper reaches of the atmosphere, but in the vastness of the sky, they gave the illusion of a team of fiery steeds pulling Mars across the sky. The phenomena lasted for 15 seconds before the pattern deteriorated and the meteors hit the thicker grass. Then, like a team of horses whose trace had broken, they came rushing earthward in a disorganized confusion. The display must have been seen by the whole northern hemisphere. I wondered what kind of explanation the natives would have for it. The awe-inspiring exhibition had so caught my eye, we did not notice the rest of the sky for almost a minute. Dimly, like fireworks set off in the sky, we began to perceive thousands of fireflies in the afternoon sky. We were almost hypnotized by the advanced bombardment of our planet by another until the results exploded around us. The concussion caused by a white-hot meteor meeting the 2-foot thick stone slab, the kind that covered the huge planets, knocked us off our feet and jarred us back to an awareness of our danger. Fortunately, we weren't injured, outside of some minor bruises from the resulting debris. The meteors were striking all over the city now. We could hear the explosions as they struck houses, and the flames were already springing up in various wooded areas. Terrified cries of the bewildered animals reached our ears. Get to the ship, my thought rang out. Luce was already heading toward the spaceport at a dead run. Turn on the repeller field, stay inside until I get back with Icy, I added needlessly as I ran in the direction of my home. Luce is the most competent officer I've ever known. If there had been another ship, he would have been in command of it. I mentally cursed myself for leaving Isis behind and wishing that mind-to-mind was effective over longer distances when a huge meteor came screaming down to strike somewhere ahead of me with a terrible explosion. It seemed as if a piece of it had exploded in my brain. I stumbled, almost fell, but didn't. I kept running, and there was a terrible emptiness inside of my head. I knew what had happened long before I knew what had happened, but I could not let myself believe it until I saw the burning wrecks of our home. I refused to let myself believe she was dead until my frantic digging in that smoldering rubble turned up a ring of hers that had been given her by the ruler of Egypt. She had vowed to never take it off. Said it was the least she could do for a man that addressed her as a goddess, and she hadn't. Her hand and a part of her arm was still attached to it, burned beyond recognition as a part of a human being. I believe this was the point I went mad. Well, it didn't show, not right away. The routines of command were too strongly ingrained in me to let it go all the way. Perhaps it would have been better if I'd become catatonic or a screaming madman. At least then my crew would have known. As it turned out, only Luce knew for sure, and in my madness I turned on him. Madness and power sometimes go hand in hand. In a state of shock, I found my way back to the ship. Luce must have picked up my anguished thoughts because he met me at the ramp, cutting off the repeller field long enough to allow me to get on board. Gently, very gently, he took the burned remains of my wife from me, while place-setting me with the soothing, calming thoughts. I didn't even sense the medic until he hit me with a tranquilizer. I followed Luce quietly as he led me to my cabin. I awoke later to the unmistakable hum of a scout ship in motion. I lay on the bed for a while, keenly, agonizingly aware of the absence of my beloved Isis, who had been a part of my life in my mind for over 50 years. I might have withdrawn completely into a catatonic state if Lucifer hadn't come in at that particular time. Come on, he said, his thoughts scathing. You can't allow her death to affect you like this. You've got to realize that there are going to be millions of lives lost in this before it's all over. Regardless of the fact that she was your wife, she's just another one of the casualties now. You have a full contingent of men and women that are depending on you to get them through this alive, and to lead the survivors. Now, are you going to lay there and feel sorry for yourself, or are you going to act like a leader? If you're not, I'll take over as captain. Somebody has to do it. Looking back, I can see now that he used the words and tone that he did to shock me back into action and sanity. It did not have quite the result he had hoped. He succeeded in me bringing me out of my apathy, but he aroused the irrational anger in me that has lasted for thousands of years. I felt that he was conspiring to take my ship away from me, and my anger surged out at him. His deeply tanned face paled at the venomous of my thoughts. I don't think he expected that kind of reaction. You will not take over my ship, I declared, nor will you try to undermine the crew's respect for me. I will lead, and you will follow my orders. We will survive. But as for them, I waved my arm to indicate the inhabitants of the land surrounding our country. I could care less. All of their lives together couldn't be the worth of the life of ISIS. With that, I left him standing there, strode to the captain's chair. He followed me to the control room, and everything took on a semblance of normality. Underneath, the tension remained. Luce had already instructed the navigator to plot a westerly course for Tiwanaku, our largest base on the western continent. We have decided to to weather the Holocaust there. It had been built on one of the highest spots on Earth, virtually inaccessible by land. It had served us for thousands of years as a refueling stop on our journeys toward the great ocean to obtain our meat and our immortality drug. After we learned the secret of anti-gravity and magnetically powered flight, it was no longer necessary to stop there for fuel, but we maintained the base's resort, letting the natives take care of the facilities and trading them for the fabulous coca extract that was so popular back home. The natives used the leaves to keep their energy for work up in the rarefied atmosphere. Under our protection and with our trade, they were the most advanced people on the continent. For the last 50 years, we've been doing quite a bit of building at TS, strengthening the already fantastically strong buildings in order to assure their survival and their contents, as this was the site of one of the libraries. When we arrived, a thunderstorm was in progress, but what a storm. The rain came down so hard, if it were not for our instruments, we would not have been unable to see the landing field. I doubt that we could have seen the gigantic signpost we'd make on the way pointing the way to Tia for our ships coming home over the great ocean back in the days before we had this sophistication of instrumentation. The lightning flashed and crackled constantly. The thunder could be heard inside our soundproof cabin. It sounded as if we were under bombardment by explosive projectiles. My normally jovial crew stared at the view screen and through the portholes in silence. We hovered over Tia for a full day before the rain let up. When we landed, we found people huddled fearfully in their villages outside the base in superstitious terror, though we did what we could to reassure them. There was nothing much we could say. They thought it was the end of the world, and they were right. All we could do was walk around and try to look confident, and even that backfired. Who else but gods would be unafraid when the world was coming into an end? Who else? We decided not to risk the wrath of the natives, so we hovered above the mighty stone city. That night we were treated to a display of the forces present in the universe that was unequaled by anything in our 5,000 years of recorded history. May no one ever be forced to witness such a spectacle again. The clouds had dissipated, leaving the sky a dark black that looked like night, but the blackness was only a background for the display of power and beauty that even the gods risked the occasional meteors to watch the battle of the gods. The upper reaches of the atmosphere were being wrenched and distorted by the forces of two planets bearing down on us. They had caused an aurora borealis effect that sent streams of blues, purples, reds, and yellows shooting through the skies. The tensions running through the crew at the mounting gulf between the popular Luce and I were momentarily set aside to watch the display of cosmic forces. Bloody, desolate, vengeful Mars dominated one side of the sky and claimed it as his own. So close was the planet, we could make out the canal-like markings, giving it the appearance of a scarred, battle-tested warrior. And more canals and markings were appearing constantly as the electrical discharges from the Earth ravage the surface of Mars. On the other side of the sky, the beautiful planet of Venus, mysterious behind her veils of blue-green gases, letting them trail behind her regally covered millions of square miles. The flickering, colorful skies were only a small part of the two planets' effect upon our atmosphere. Though the clouds had dissipated, the lightning bolts still crackled and crashed across the brilliant battlefield of the sky. Ball lightning floated across our field of vision. All personnel were confined to the ship by my orders, and all were crowded in the control room to watch the spectacle. We could tell from the glow around the ports that the exterior of the ship was bathed in a brilliant blue fire caused by the charged atmosphere. We could see some of the blue crackling balls bouncing around the ground. I knew that the natives were terrified and that we would have hell trying to convince them afterwards that we were not in league with the terrible gods that were fighting with terrible weapons of fire if there was an afterwards. Everyone was tense, thought shield prevailed. No one wanted the others to know how scared they were. Of course, that added to the tension and feelings of hostility that was growing between Luce and myself. The communications officer brought me a message. I read it out loud, though I realized it was a bad time to inflict bad news on the crew, but if I hadn't, the grapevine would spread the news in less than an hour. Scout ship number 4 has been disabled. Captain Osiris was torn to pieces, and most of his crew killed by their advance efforts to aid the natives of the two major cities near Egypt. The natives blamed them for the disturbances. The last of the survivors activated the self-destruct mechanism out of anger. Both Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed in the blast. As far as we know, there have been no survivors either in the ship's complement or the native population. I could feel their shock in spite of their shielding. I knew my anger at the ignorance of the people we were trying to help was shared by more than a few. From now on, I said, my voice tight, there will be no more intermingling with the natives. All contact will be supervised and will require my order as well as maximum security precautions. I felt Luce's ear uneasiness. Luce spoke up as I knew he would. We are assigned to aid these people, Tet. We can't allow one incident like that to destroy the rapport we worked for the last 50 years to build. We walked among them for years. They trust us. No more! Such a rapport has cost lives and may endanger the knowledge contained on this ship. I answered in sonorous tones that conveyed the finality of my decision. Luce subsided, but I knew he would not readily yield to my authority if he disagreed with my decision. He was far too intelligent to obey orders without question. I began to consider him a threat. Gil and Enki retired to their cabin, trying to stay out of the way. I knew he had made many contacts with the natives on many continents. One, he had given instructions on how to build a boat which would carry his family and local fauna to safety through should the seas rise. We maintained our position over the mighty mountains until the next day. By that time, the tremors had begun. High above the tallest pinnacle, we saw mighty rocks we had carved with our lasers, tossed around like pebbles. We saw buildings and monuments constructed so lovingly with our tractor beams, shaken until they collapsed like an anthill under a boot. The planets seemed to fill the sky now. We knew that we would soon know if the world was to survive. The waiting, the unending lightning, the crashing lightning set our nerves on edge. It was then we got the message from Archibald at home. With all the free electricity in the air, it was almost impossible for us to hear the garbled message in its entirety, but we managed to grasp the terrible implications. Earthquake, loosen the foundations, continent is crumbling, water everywhere, help us, coming apart. I snapped orders at the pilot and we headed back home at top speed. It only took us 2 hours to get back, but in that time, we also heard the last transmission of scout ship number 2 from the northern reaches. Have been hit by a meteor too large for the force field to handle. We'll sit down among the natives, those of us that are still alive. The Asgard is almost totally destroyed. Captain Odin is injured. We've not been able to save the library. Good luck to the rest. 2 ships gone, and the worst not even on us yet. My madness grew. I blamed the natives for the loss of the ships, just as they blamed us for the destruction of their world. If I had not been mad at this time, The very sight that met our eyes as we hovered over our home would have driven me over the brink. The very rock on which our homes and factories were built was buckling and boiling like a heated mud bath. The homes no longer visible. The ocean that surrounded our land was lapping at landmarks that had once been hundreds of miles from the sea. Waves 100 feet high were devouring our mountains and fields. The temple had succumbed to the ravenous water in the 3 hours that had taken us to get there. 1,000 years of knowledge had died with Archie. Within 20 hours, we saw the death throes of the mightiest nation on earth beneath us. All that could be seen, where our proud people once lived and worked, was the terrible raging ocean. The end was upon us. In a little less than a day, Atlantis had sunk beneath the waves. The next day brought us the news of our remaining companion ship, a mile above the surface, had been hit by a tidal wave and forced to land. Communications were broken. We hoped beyond hope that the ship might still be intact, acknowledged it contained safe. It's impossible for the mind of man to cope with the catastrophes of the magnitude we witnessed. The burning skies, the tons of flammable material poured on Earth from Mars, the walls of water that covered over 3/4 of the land masses, including the tallest mountains on Earth that happened to be on the side pointing at Venus, the horrible roaring of the wind and the tortured Earth as magnetic fields of 3 planets met. The Earth's rotation ground to a halt, stopped by the gravitational forces beyond our wildest imagination. To us, it appeared that the sun had stopped in its path. When it finally started again, it was going in the wrong direction, from east to west. The Earth tilted on its axis, causing the temperate northern climates to freeze over, killing our herds of mammoths, wiping out the fields where we grew our immortality drug. Yet we survived. We watched the rains come, almost as if the tortured Earth was trying to cleanse itself after the battle. After the rain stopped, we found that we were not alone. So tenacious is the thing called life that not even the collision of planets can destroy it. In Egypt, people and buildings that we helped erect survived. We let Gil off near there. He was a natural leader, as I have said, and he took full advantage of his trip with the gods to establish his prestige and leadership. Luce was quite proud of King Gilgamesh. I will not elaborate on the final showdown between Luce and I. Fear that my rejection of him and the long feud we carried on, even after I had forced him and his followers out of the ship, caused his name to be tarnished, his record of service to be blackened. It was so needless too. There were enough people left, and we had enough of the immortality drug to watch the natives multiply. We could have shared the world and our theories. Maybe his way would have been better. I don't know now. I was once so sure. But I was mad. I let the natives convince me that I was a god and force them to address me as such. And I, the Lord God, threw the rebellious angel Lucifer arch down to the hell that was earth, forever banning him from my ship, heaven. I gave my people commands, no longer did I suggest it. They did not do as I said, I simply destroyed them. My angels were blood-stained demons. The years passed, and so did the life of my faithful angels. I let some of the more advanced natives have access to the immortality drug in reward for the loyalty, but none had the will to live forever. Soon they too were gone. Because the people thought only gods could work miracles, they never developed the latent power of their minds, and I was lonely. I knew that Luce was somewhere on earth trying to convince the natives that I was a false god. In my clearer moments, I wished him luck. So much time has passed. Venus came by once more, but she settled into a safe harbor. So did Mars, but they did not come as close and did little damage. Once upon a time, I could see what I had done, and I felt I must make one last try to set things straight. I found a beautiful woman in whose veins ran the blood of the Atlantean, and though married, was yet a virgin. I abducted her and utilized my sperm to impregnate her. I let her bring my only begotten son into the world, though I talked with him often and through him let the people feel the love I once had from them. They were still barbarian. They killed him. I tried to save him with every piece of advanced medical knowledge at my disposal. I succeeded only in reviving him momentarily. He died soon after from the severity of his wounds. I could take it no longer. From afar, I watched the slow evolution of mankind. I no longer communicated with them or cared. For the last 2,000 years, I've been lost in madness. 100 years ago, I landed here in my final resting place. Sometimes I go walk in the sunshine, but the last person I saw was from a tribe of red savages, not much different from the natives who lived around Lake Titicaca. I've stopped taking a drug that prolongs my life. Age has caught up with me. I find myself thinking more and more of my friend Lucifer, the Lucky, and wonder if he still walks the earth. He cared more for mankind than I ever did. I wonder if he ever thinks about me. I wonder if he can ever forgive me. I'm sorry, Luce. The passage ended. I closed the book and sat in silence. Lucifer had returned to heaven. The Lord and his angels were dead. The fallen angel had returned to claim his birthright. God was dead and the evil one reigns unchecked on earth. Ha! Men still seek to demonize that which they do not understand. I really could take over. The mightiest armies on earth would bow to the power of heaven. Heaven would respond to my touch. With the aid of my fellows, I could live the next 10,000 years as a god instead of a mortal. I could live the rest of my life isolated by power, going mad as my old friend had. I slid into my duster as I silently said goodbye to my friend and enemy, Tetragrammaton, Lord Jehovah, Yahweh. He would remain here forever. I would not return unless the world ended once more. Even then, I'm not sure I would make the same choice we had before. My future no longer lay in the past. I forgive you, Ted, I told him, my voice echoing the great ship's empty chambers. The mighty stone door sealed behind me. I cranked the Harley and rode into the setting sun. Unconsciously, I hummed my favorite Rolling Stones tune, Into the Wind. Alright, got a few more minutes. That book will be finished. It'll be put in book form. A lot to add in that. That was just a short story. Just a short story. And maybe you guys, well, I'm going to check the things out. Let's hear the full Phoenix Bird of Destiny. I wrote this at the same time. That, and you've heard part of it. Let's hear the whole thing.
centuries numbered 10 times, 10 times 10. Still you watch me whisper and say that you will come again. And once more man will prosper beneath your rainbow wing. And on your mighty far-flecked back there shall stand that man. His words will be for the voice you lack, a guide for the race of man. Our rainbow bird, mighty phoenix, come once more into the eyes of man. From the ancient days of Atlantis, centuries numbered 10 times, 10 times 10. 10 times, 10 times 10. 10 times, 10 times 10. 10 times, 10 times 10.
Alright, I don't know what's going on here with the air. Don't know why it's dead air. I'm talking. I talked right up into the time that I started playing that one bit of music, and I only had one song that I played. So, don't know what happened there. And if you want to read that book, well, you can order it in advance, but still have work to do. I have spent the last 40 years researching that because it wasn't quite complete, wasn't filled up. And so that research will be there, available, and it'll be up on the in the books here a very short time in the future. So thanks for listening. FreeAmerican.com, shop.freeamerican.com is where to get the other books that I've written. And if we sell some of those books, maybe we'll continue on this. Thank you. God bless you.